Mike Benz, you've been following and put up some amazing tweets late last week and over the weekend that ties what I call another mafia crime family, another mafia story that connects the impeachment trial of Ken Paxton, which really MAGA's on trial. It's Roe versus MAGA, the Bushes versus MAGA, all the way to 9/11 on what you call the geopolitics of oil in West Texas. What do you mean by this, sir?
Sure. So, Steve, as you know, my focus is the censorship industry. But to disentangle what's at the heart of social media censorship, you really need to understand the military industry, the finance industry, and the energy industry. And there's no place where that more sort of acutely comes together than in the geopolitics of West Texas. And what I mean by that is when Trump came to power in 2016, he didn't just defeat the Clinton dynasty. He also defeated the Bush dynasty. And the Bush dynasty grows out of this oil intelligence, Defense Department, State Department, CIA wing. You can almost think of politics in this country before 2016 as a kind of constant struggle between the Yale wing of the CIA and the Texas A&M wing of the CIA, if you will, in terms of the foreign policy machinations that come out of the State Department. When Trump came in and defeated both of those factions, they essentially banded together. And in West Texas produces more oil and gas than almost every country on earth. The largest oil field in Texas, the Permian Basin, produces more oil than the largest oil field in Saudi Arabia. There's a grand Ukraine energy play here, which involves privatizing Naftogaz and then killing Gazprom to capture the energy market, the LNG market, by taking all of this precious West Texas oil and gas and then shipping it. You ship it in containers, you liquefy the natural gas, and then you sell it at massively marked up prices to a captive market in Europe. And that secures windfall profits for Chevron, Exxon, Halliburton, and Shell, all of whom signed multi-billion-dollar deals with the government of Ukraine before the 2014 war broke out with Russia. They have a huge military interest in recapturing that territory to preserve and protect those investments, and Trump's foreign policy threatened all of that. And so what you see manifest here in the Ken Paxton impeachment is the same thing you actually saw with Joe Biden in Ukraine. It's about controlling the prosecutors because that's how you control the politics. And so Ken Paxton went very hard on the Biden administration. He actually was the sponsor of the best anti-censorship bill in the country, the Texas anti-censorship social media law. And he was then impeached, it turns out, by a Bush cabal, including George P. Bush, who ran against him for attorney general. So what you have here essentially is the use of the Pentagon, the State Department, and the CIA to secure and protect lucrative business deals for this Yankee cowboy alliance.
Talk to me about how the folks down at, because this is responded with folks in Texas, the grassroots down there are now in a pitched battle against the Bush wing of this. So are the people starting to understand, maybe they don't understand the details of this, of what this cabal or cartel that you put together, but do you think that this is now open conflict between the last remnants of the Bush hold on political power?
It certainly is. And what it reflects is a conflict of interest between stakeholders in the American empire and the citizens of the American homeland. This was not really a civil war in the GOP until the fruits of globalization started to turn ill. That is, during the bulk of the 20th century, I don't think this civil war within the GOP would have manifest, because what was good for West Texas was generally good for the people who lived in the American homeland. Gas prices were low, export markets were secured, it increased American jobs and prosperity. But then as the wealth that spilled over from this small coterie of stakeholders in our foreign affairs mafia started to really only benefit them, the people who started to challenge globalization started running up more and more against this same Bush family dynasty legacy. And now you're right, it is coming to a pitched battle, and this is the fight of the century.
Well, the way you describe this is like you remember the founders were mesmerized by Republican Rome and built many of our institutions on the inspiration from the Roman Republic. The way you describe this, if you look at the Biden family, and because he's been involved since the 1970s, 1980s, the Clintons and the Bushes, you're talking about families that have been deeply embedded into the administrative state, not just elected politics, but the administrative state for over a half a century. Is this like late Republican Rome, where you had these major families that basically ran the apparatus, and that's one of the reasons the whole thing crumbled at the end? Their corruption, their uniparty corruption in late Republican Rome led to their overthrow. Is that a similar? We're going through a similar thing? Because people always talk about we're like the year 300 with the empire. Is what we're fighting for now really the ability to get our republic back and destroy these families that are essentially oligarchs?
Well, it's hard to argue with that. The Kagan family has essentially been in control of Ukraine policy for several generations. Even Tony Blinken, his father, essentially ran the CIA Voice of America archive for the George Soros family. And even the George Soros story has now been passed down from father to son, as Alex Soros now controls the $30 billion Open Society Foundation. Milton Friedman once said, that as individualistic as he's known for, this is actually a family society, not so much an individual society. And most of the time, that's for the best. It incentivizes a lot of wonderful things. The issue is you now have a sort of mafia family more than anything, and it's bipartisan, I should say, in a way that sort of fuses these bloodlines into political power. Like, for example, George Soros is a large stakeholder in Halliburton. Halliburton was run by the chairman was Dick Cheney, and Halliburton holds the oil contracts for processing the oil fields in Ukraine. So, this sort of West Texas oil story is deeply fused with Wall Street and London stakeholders. The only people who really don't have a seat at the table are the ordinary, everyday American people.
And that's why the Ken Paxton, this is why the Ken Paxton trial is so important. This is a populist movement versus the kind of mafia Bush family down in Texas, this fusion of intelligence, defense contracting, the State Department, and of course, oil and gas.